The Obi Wan Kenobi series is back on track, ladies and gentlemen. While episode 4 was good, not great, episode 5 was the culmination of everything we have expected for years on end, practically since Disney took over. To an extent, even Lucasfilm dropped the ball when they had the property because this Vader was never really seen. Sure, we could see it in novels and especially the comics, how powerful Vader is, but we longed and longed for it to see in the big screen. Now we got to see it. Episode 5 was a marvelous episode showing what Darth Vader is truly capable of. Of course, my mind immediately raced to, you guessed it, Galen Marek, aka Starkiller. Starkiller has been and continues to be one of my favorite characters of all time. He falls under Legends now, sadly, played by Sam Witwer, of course. Outside of working on some Clone Wars episodes, that's where his Star Wars career achieved supremacy, basically, not only in voicing Maul, but also doing Starkiller, becoming what he was destined to be. The problem with Galen Marek Starkiller and Darth Vader is the discrepancy. This is what fans have commented about for years and years now, that Starkiller might be much more powerful than Darth Vader. Of course, as I said, this is because we have never seen Darth Vader in this type of action. However, when you play the games, The Force Unleashed 1 and 2, Starkiller is this supreme being. You can't even call him a Jedi, you can't call him a Sith. He is just one of the greatest Force users of all time, leading many also to believe that he is extremely OP as a character. In the video game, not only do you go to defeat Darth Vader, but you also go head-to-head, toe-to-toe, and almost defeat Sidious as well. It's kind of crazy to think back on those days, how powerful really Starkiller was, but what we saw in episode 5 kind of mitigated that. And I think that was the main goal of the writers and the directors. Everybody who was in charge wanted to show this side of Darth Vader, to shut the naysayers up once and for all that it wasn't just Starkiller. Vader is that powerful too. You have just not seen it yet. Well, not only did we see it, Hayden Christensen saw it as well, and he had some comments too about how great it was to be Darth Vader again. I'll be making more videos about that. Comment if you want more personalized videos from me. Like I did in previous videos, I would love to discuss what Hayden Christensen just said about Vader and possibly coming back. We're gonna leave that for a different video. What I wanted to talk about today mostly is how episode 5 basically fixed the discrepancy between Darth Vader and Starkiller that has existed for years now, ever since we played that video game. Out of universe, of course, we know the reason. Back in the old trilogy days, they just did not have the technology. Vader was powerful, but he was extremely down to earth. So was Luke, for that matter. The only one that seemed to be extremely powerful in the original trilogy is Palpatine to a degree, because he simply used Force lightning to such a high degree that he almost vaporized Luke Skywalker to death. But what we see in the original trilogy is basically surface level. Now, with the technology that we have today, you can see what they can do with Darth Vader. He simply grabbed a ship out of mid-air, landed it, and split it open like a can of tuna. Straight out of Starkiller's book. We know that Starkiller in the game, you could say he had a bigger feat because he pulled down a Star Destroyer way up above in the sky. So I don't want to compare the two, but just saying, this mistake with Starkiller was finally fixed. I'm just glad that now Vader and Starkiller could be seen at the same level. Again, Vader was powerful, we know that, we have seen that, just not on screen mostly, and now we got to see it in episode 5, because the difference level was huge. I mean, in Legends, Sidious actually was kind of jealous of Galen Marek. As you all know, Sidious was one of the most powerful Sith Lords, possibly of all time. However, even with all that power, he still couldn't match the sheer might and power of Starkiller. That might seem like an exaggeration, but in fact, we see Galen Marek beat Vader convincingly, and he got extremely close in downing the Emperor as well. But here's why Sidious ultimately was really jealous of Starkiller. Think of this. What have we seen Sidious use the most? Force lightning, right? He prided himself in having perfected that Force power and crushed anyone who dared to stand in his way. In spite of all that, would you believe that Starkiller was more powerful in Force Lightning than Sidious himself? In fact, Starkiller used a variation of Force Lightning that no one in the history of both Jedi or Sith was able to achieve. Only Starkiller could use this Force Lightning variation or Force power. When we think about Starkiller, almost always we think about his absolute monstrous Force abilities. Rarely could any Jedi or Sith in history compare to his might, and to top it off, he had some Force powers in his repertoire that only he possessed. Starkiller went on to retain every Force connection that the original Galen Marek possessed, advancing quickly thanks to both Darth Vader's brutal training methods and memory flashes of the original Galen Marek experiences. Now, it has to be noted that the memory flashes did grant him knowledge of advanced Force techniques that he was previously unaware of. But what else can we say about his telekinetic abilities? He had such raw strength that many times he literally stopped TIE fighters mid-air only to crush them, and the infamous pull of a Star Destroyer. But before I jump into his unique Force ability, which is the point of this whole video, let's be real, the biggest and astronomical Force power that Starkiller possessed was his lightning variants. He could strike with multiple rounds of lightning and in different aspects. He found many ways to kill and eviscerate enemies with his lightning Force power. You can forgive me if I spam that lightning Force power in the game, but now we come to the main point. The unique Force power. The only Jedi or Grey Jedi to have used this power in this specific way. One of Starkiller's unique abilities was a variant of Mind Trick. Unlike Jedi who used it for peaceful purposes, Starkiller instead would take complete control over his target's mind, convincing them to attack their allies or, in the extreme cases, jump from high places or into environmental hazards. But that's not all. When he would advance his skills with Mind Trick, he was able to control up to 3 enemies at a time, and when the effects of Mind Trick wore off, they, meaning his targets or enemies, would physically explode in a sudden burst of Force energy. This last part was unheard of by anyone who used an advanced Mind Trick. No Jedi or Sith in history. This was the power of Starkiller, and now it's gone. It's no longer canon. To be honest, that's one of my pet peeves from this whole Legends canon separation, and yeah, I understand his powers are often too OP, and it may not be good to introduce these powers in canon, but what can I say? I'm extremely biased when it comes to Starkiller. Of course, what we just said is all Legends, but Vader luckily is canon, and what is canon also is how powerful he is right now. He can actually tear a ship down and split it open effortlessly. Guys, what did you think about Darth Vader's scene yesterday? Thank you so much for watching. Now you go have an awesome day, Star Wars fans. I'll see you in the next video, and may the Force be with you. Until then.